Hi to all and welcome to our blog. My name is Jim Cuervo and I am your senior instructor and support here at Digital Drafting Systems. In today's blog, we will continue with our custom panels and pattern-based curtain walls, and through the use of Dynamo, we will create attractors that after we run the routines described herein, will create a gradation between fully open panels and fully closed ones, and in this way creating a very nice facade effect on our design. Here in our Revit project, the first thing we will do after creating this panel is to go ahead and launch Dynamo from inside Revit. Let's go ahead and do that. We go to the visual programming here in the manage and we go to the Dynamo to launch it. As you can see, we have launched Dynamo. Then we go over here to the files and say new. And in this way, we have created a linked Dynamo project at this point. This particular file that we're creating is now linked to the open Revit because we opened Dynamo through Revit and created the file in that way. Now, here in Dynamo, whenever you actually right-click in this area called the Graph Editor area, you will get a search dialog box in this way. And for the very first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and tell Dynamo to allow it to look into the Revit project that it's linked to and collect any family types that it might see within the project. So let's go ahead and type here as a search pattern for a family types parameter. As you can see, by typing some of the words, it starts to actually give you all of the items, and we're looking for the family types right here to start. This family types parameter will allow us to actually look into the Revit project, and here in this section, if you open it up, the flyout will actually give you all of the family types within the particular project. The type that we're looking for, because we're dealing with the curtain walls that are based on patterns, is the triangle bent panel right here. So we select that one first. Now that we have identified the specific family type that we want to actually go ahead and apply our little routine to, we will now ask Dynamo to count the amount of this particular panel type there are in the project. We do that by, once again, doing the search by right-click. We will be doing a lot of right-clicking in order to find our parameters. We'll look for the all families. Oh, sorry, not all families, but all elements. It's the name of the parameter of family type. Now, if you look at here, you'll see that you have all elements, all elements, all elements, and the one that we're looking for is this one right here, which is the all elements of family type. By allowing this to come here, we now are going to connect the family types that it's been found by the family types out here into the family types in of the all elements type. This is the counter. So this is going to be connected by left button click and hold and dragging over and releasing here. Okay, once this is done, we can see that this is telling me that of these panels in this project, we have 156 units. This done, what we will do now is go ahead and minimize Dynamo, go back to the Revit project that is linked to this particular file, okay, and do a couple of things. So let's go ahead and minimize. And now we are in our Revit project. Here in our Revit project, we are going to switch over to the level 1 of the particular project. And we see that we have a plan view of our item that has been seen in 3D to be this panel. That is a panel that has been divided in using the bent triangle format. Let's go back to level 1 then. And here in level 1, what we will do is we will come over to create here, and then we will actually say we're going to create a reference plane. If it wants you to save the project, go ahead and save the project. And we'll draw our plane larger and longer, or rather longer and well in front of the um, object that we want to actually go ahead and apply the Dynamo script to. Okay, and once this is done, we can go to the modify, select the object again, and under the name, we will call this one attractor plane. And let's call more specifically reference. Okay, as you can see now, the attractor reference has been we've gone ahead and renamed it, so it's easier for us to go ahead and define it or select it as our reference plane where we want to draw. Now that we've done that, what we will do now is we will go ahead and say set work plane. We will come over here to the level 1 named, open that up, and we see the attractor reference right here. And we'll say OK. Once that's done, it's going to ask us to go ahead and define the elevation that you're going to be working on. This side is the east elevation, so we select the east elevation and we'll say Open View. Okay, once in the Open View, we can go ahead and say Zoom to Fit. And it's telling me that we have the isolation, so let's go ahead and reset. Go ahead back to the east elevation. There we go. Okay, it's a little bit of a glitch there we were having, but not a problem. Here is what we want to be working on, okay? That now we have to go ahead and define our ellipse. Okay, let's switch this from a shaded mode to a wireframe mode. It's a little easier to define what we're looking for. Then we'll go ahead over here to the draw and select the ellipse that we wanted to use. And we'll just go ahead and create the ellipse here. Okay, and I don't even want to use anything that is that could actually um, somehow or other, and I've noticed that this happens, be placed on a different reference than the one that I want. So I'm actually going to make sure that it's not anywhere other than the reference plane that I want, which is the attractor reference, and click to set my center of my ellipse, keep it nice and straight. I don't want it too big, so I want it about there, and I don't want it too wide. It's about there. Once this is done, we can then say cancel, obviously. Go to the modify, and let's move it in place, which is going to be smack in the middle of this panel here. So we'll go ahead and select it, and then we'll just go ahead and move it right about there. Okay, now that that's done, we will continue with our next step. The next step is to actually go back into our Dynamo, okay, and invoke a couple of more parameters that will force us to come back. In order to make things a little bit easier, because now I have the ellipse selected, okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and isolate the object so it makes it a lot easier for me to select the object in a few moments. So let's go ahead and come to the temporary hide and isolate the element, which allows us to see just the ellipse, which is exactly where we want to be. So we go back to Dynamo by coming here, go into our Dynamo. Okay, and in our Dynamo, what I want to do now is I want to invoke a select model elements. This is going to actually go back into the Revit file, and it's going to select that shape that we have there, but we need to select it. That's why we went ahead and isolated it. So let's go ahead and call up the select model elements parameter. And we will go ahead and in case we have multiple, it's a good idea to use the plural So let's go ahead and invoke the plural. Although we don't have multiple, we just have one. The actual workflow that I'm showing you here works for both multiples and singulars. So let's go ahead and continue. And as we can see, we have now a select model elements done. Okay. Now we need to invoke the select. So we go to the select item here. We switch over to the Revit, which is going to be here, but we need to actually minimize. I forgot about that. Okay, and we'll go ahead and select like that. Well, actually, I'll go right to left. I want to see these little rings that appear on the quadrants of this, and I've noticed that if you don't actually go this way, sometimes it doesn't quite get it. So let's see and hope that this is actually going to do what we want. And there it is. Sure enough, as I said, here is our single element already identified through the select model elements mode or parameter. For us to go ahead and grab the object that we found and put it into a list through in Dynamo, which is going to be the element geometry parameter, the one that gives us the list. So let's go ahead and right click, element, space geometry. There it is. Let's go ahead and place it next to the select models, and we'll go ahead and link it. Okay, as you can see now, this is identifying that there is an object that we're looking for. We selected the object, and in here, what it has done is it's actually listed it with its full description right there. To convert this shape that we see that has been now brought in right there, let's go ahead and come here and say zoom to that. That's my shape. Okay, let's go back into the foreground. Okay, and so we're going to grab that shape that has been now brought into Dynamo from Revit and turn it in from a shape to a patch or surface by using the parameter surface by patch. Surface by patch, which is right here. And we'll go ahead and connect the variable out to the closed curve in this fashion. And as you can see, it automatically creates the actual surface. Now understand that the reason that this is actually happening in this fashion, which is actually very good because I always believe that you should actually check every step. You don't want to have an error and then not know where it's coming from or have to go back and redo the whole set. So what I am actually doing is something that is, I do like it a lot of the times, but I mostly like to do it manually. For now, we'll leave it automatic, which is basically down here in the Dynamo, you can see that it's actually running on automatic. In other words, whatever I have here will automatically run every time I do a change. Okay, I could actually have it as manual or automatic, okay, or periodic, which is every so often. We're going to leave it at automatic for now. With all of this done, what we will do now is we will go ahead and invoke a list flatten parameter that allows all of this to be condensed down into an object for the lists that we can then use in our little script that we're actually composing here. So let's go ahead and invoke the list flatten by right click. You can type flatten. It'll actually appear right there. This is the one that we're looking for. Okay. And we actually are going to connect the surface patch out surface to the list flatten list item right here by doing it as we have been doing earlier by connecting just then and there. And then this list is now passed over to here, as you can see. Okay, we have one surface listed as 0, but it is actually one surface right there. Okay, let's move on now that we have identified the surface within Dynamo. This next part is more than anything to be used when you have multiple surfaces that have been flattened into a list. Okay, since we have one surface only, we don't really need to use it, but we're going to use it anyway just to continue in our flow. So let's go ahead and zoom this out. Now, the continuing the flow that I'm talking about is we're talking about being able to do it either for a single object for attractors or multiple objects for attractors. Now, the parameter in order for us to be able to do that is called polysurface by joint surfaces, which is going to be then added onto the last part of the list flattened. So let's go ahead and right click here and say poly surface. Okay, and space by joined surfaces, which is really this one right here. This is the one we're looking for. Okay, now that we have that here, actually this is actually getting a little bit much, so let's go ahead and close that. Now that we have that here, we can roll the mouse forward or backwards to zoom in and out, or we can press it to actually pan, okay, just like in Revit. And we go now that we have this poly surface by joint surfaces up, we will connect the list out to the surface in of this particular parameter in this fashion. Okay, and so when we come here, we see that the item is telling us it is now one surface. To go ahead and take this track, which is identifying the elements of or the family elements, to this particular section in here, which is going to be is now identifying what will be our attractors. Okay, so we need to now connect these two branches so they can interact together. What we will do now is we will go ahead and create an element get location to identify where these items are. So we right click, element, oops, remember you have to be inside, element get location, the element dot get element. It's got to be spelled right. Okay, get location, which is this one right here. And we, oops, go ahead and connect these elements here from the elements type to this elements get location. So we can then see how the actual attractor is or where the attractor is in relationship to the placement of our panels that we have just identified here. Now that we have identified where the actual panels are in relationship to the actual surface that we're going to be using as the attractor, we now need to connect these two items to understand what the distances are and how they're going to affect one another by calling here a geometry distance 2. And that's how we're going to connect these two. So let's go ahead, right click here, and we actually make sure that our cursor is there. It's going to be called geometry distance 2, which is this little puppy right here. Okay, so in this one, what we will do is we'll connect the geometry, okay, from the get location to the geometry distance 2. So this one gets connected here. That's one part. And then what we will do is we'll take the poly surface from the by joint surfaces parameter and collect it to the other here. At which case, we can see that our list is actually getting very interesting. But upon opening the list that results from the unification of these two, we see that these numbers are way too big and they're, in feet or whatever it is that this is, we need to actually convert it into a percentage value. Okay, and in order for us to do that, we need to do a remapping range, and the parameter for that is called the math remap range. So we call math space remap range. Go ahead and take the math out there. And there it is. Okay, and it is this that we are now going to use to go ahead and convert this into a percentage value. And so we will begin the conversion or the remapping of the range by taking the geometry distance to double values, this, and we'll connect it here to the numbers. Okay. Once this is connected, what we will do now is create two numerical parameters that are going to be defined for the new minimum and new maximums. Okay. So we'll do that by right click here and type in number. And we call this one right here, place it there and connect it to the minimum, a new minimum range. Okay, move it up a little bit, right click again, type in number. Oops, cursor has to be there. Select the number again, bring it here and connect it to the new maximum. Okay, now with that, for the minimum, okay, we're going to put in the value of 0.850. Okay, that's one. And then for the number in the the new maximum, I know these numbers are flipped because I actually want to see the closer, I want to see the close ones in the middle and the open ones towards the outside. That's why I have these numbers reversed. Here for the minimum, new max, we're going to put 0.6 and hit the enter key. You will notice that it always adds a zero in front, and that's very important a little further down. By looking at the values here, and we'll notice that is now a percentage, as you can see. Okay, now we need to go ahead and add another level of control that is going to allow us to see what it is that we're going to be using as a maximum value for us to go ahead and use that as a control level to open or close our panels. So in order to do that, we will now invoke a code block parameter. Oops, remember that it needs to be here. This one right there. It's the only one. Now, remember I told you that it was important to know about this zero. Zero. Okay, so if you want to do that correctly, in here in the code block, you actually type in what you're actually going to be creating that code block for. It's a value, so we type in value. Okay, we do a space. Okay, and it's going to be less than, which is that. And now watch, I'm not going to put the zero in. I'm going to put in 0.850 or 850 here like that. And it gives me an error. The error is right here. If I put the zero in there, it's no longer an error. We are now going then to connect the list out of the math remap range into the code block value here in this fashion. So what we just did is created with this code block a true false list. All right, here, and let's keep it open. And upon inspection of the true false list, we see that we have a lot of values that are true. There's not a lot of falses. Okay, so let's go ahead and increase the amount of falses that are going to appear here. So then why don't we just go ahead and create this to be a 7 rather than a 5 and see what happens. And now we have a lot more falses, which is actually good. We have a trues and falses. This is much, much better now. We will move on by now seeing that we have our list here with more falses and trues. It's a little bit more even, it looks like. Okay, and this one is now set to decimals, and this one went from actual inch values or foot values to decimals and now to true false, we will now create an if argument that is going to go ahead and give us the differences between the closed and open ones. So let's call an if parameter argument. So it's going to be coming in here, right click, obviously, type the word if. There is my if. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit and pan it over. Let's go ahead and move this here. Okay, and what we are going to connect or start to connect is going to be the value of the code block here out to the test point here in. So we're going ahead and connect that. Okay, with that one connected, we will call in yet another number parameter by right click again. Make sure your cursor is in the actual type in. We'll go ahead and call this one number, which is right there. We'll move it here because it's going to connect to the if arguments. And we will connect the number by giving it first a value of 0.3. Okay, and we are actually going to connect the out to the true. Okay, then the next thing is in the math rampage. Okay, or rather not math rampage, but remap range. We're going to connect the list here to the false of the if argument. Let's go ahead and move this up a little bit, close this off. And so we'll connect as a secondary connection. Let's just go ahead and move this over here so we don't have so many lines intersecting one another. And now we have the math remap range connected to our false value here in the if argument. And here is our new list. Okay. Identifying all of the numbers as we required them. The next step being to call forward two different parameters. They are related to one another. That's why I'm actually mentioning them both at the same time. The first parameter that we're going to actually call forward is a string parameter to which we are actually going to type the name of the parameter that we're looking for. Okay, and that's going to be located in Revit. Let me show you the parameter that we're looking for here by minimizing this. Okay, let's end the isolation here. Okay, let's go ahead and tab to select one of these. And the parameter we're looking for is this offset. This is the parameter that needs to be in Dynamo that actually controls the closing and the opening. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. Now we know. And so let's go back to our Dynamo. Okay, and go ahead and call our parameters up. And the first parameter being, let's go ahead and pan this over a little bit. First parameter being the string parameter, which is basically a text parameter. Once again, make sure that your cursor is there. There's my string parameter. And in the value here, we're going to call this one offset. Remember, caps matter, spelling matters. Okay, so with this, let's go ahead and place this here. And now let's call the element set parameter by name. So right click, element, set parameter by name. Sometimes it's better to do it this way, which is there it is. Okay. And what we will do now is connect in the following way. Let's connect the string offset to the parameter name. Okay, then we will take the results from the if argument and we will go ahead and connect that to the value in. Let's go ahead and move this up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a mess here, but so let's move it down instead and just click it into value in. And the elements that we're looking for at this point is going to be here in the elements that we connect to the in, okay? And that is going to be from the elements of type, okay? All elements of type. Basically, we're going to regrab all elements of type, which is this one here, and we're going to go ahead and connect it to the elements value here. So let's go ahead and grab a secondary, and we will place it right there. At this point, it is actually running it because, as we said earlier, we have it set to automatic. Let's give it a couple of moments to see the actual results. Now that it has completed the actual application of our script, let's go ahead into Revit and see what it did. Minimize the Dynamo. We will then come over here and end the isolation. We will go to the right elevation, and by looking at it, okay, we will transfer it to the realistic values here, and as we can see, it's a really interesting set of patterns based on the proximity to our little attractor here. As you can see, we have some opened items, some closed items, and some in between. Okay, now you will also notice that this is actually an RFA. I'm using a testing panel, but it's just one panel. What do we do with this now? This is a family. This is not a project. Okay, so in the next step, we're going to see what we do with this. And for that, we have pre-created a project which will receive this particular curtain wall divided panel. So we'll come over here and switch ourselves back to the welcome screen. Here's our little project. Okay, let's go ahead and let it open. Okay, let's go ahead and here, and let's go ahead and load it into the new project, which is at this point is it is, and we can come in here and here's our object. But we're not going to do it here in this particular view because it's too hard to control. What we will do though is we will open, let's say level 3. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's get rid of this. Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and place it here by going in here. And let's go ahead into our in objects. Let's not do this one then. Let's move back into level 1. And there it is. Okay. And let's go ahead and place our object right about here so it's nice and flat against that surface there, because we really don't want it on the surface because this is just a screen, you could say. Okay, so let's go ahead and move it forward. Okay, let's make sure that we have it end to end, which is right there. That is nice. Let's go ahead and move it up a little bit. That's much better. Okay, let's go ahead and that looks good. That looks good. Let's go ahead and mirror this object onto the other side. Okay, so we'll just select that. We'll mirror it using my midpoint. Okay, and there it is. Let's go ahead and copy it over here. Okay, and we can actually hit the, by selecting it, hit the space bar to rotate it, and let's put it in place. Okay, and we just shift it down a little bit there. so we can have a good alignment. And let's go ahead and move it back. Okay, it takes a little bit, or we can actually just move it like that. Okay, and this is got it off a little bit, so we just kind of, that's perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and mirror that sucker, or that item here. And mirror it over there. Okay, and now that we've got it all in place, let's go over here to the 3D. We see this one is set to level 1. This one is set to, let's go ahead and see what the offset here is. It's 0, so the offset on these are off. Let's go ahead and switch them. Okay, those offsets should be 0 feet. Okay, like this. Let's go ahead and arc rotate around it. And let's take a look at this in color. And just give it a second so it goes ahead. As you can see here, it's quite a very impressive little effect that we've got in this particular piece. So in order for us to get a better understanding of what it is that we did and how it affects the actual final um, um, model, I've already invoked the Enscape and brought this into Enscape so we can see it a lot more clearly. And here it is. And as you can see here in Enscape, it's giving us a nice effect happening here. And obviously, when I actually go ahead and switch some of these values in the script, okay, we need to remember that because this is a family, we're doing this to a family, we have to reload it into the project. Otherwise, it won't take effect, okay? So with that, this has been Jim Cuervo. I hope you've enjoyed this particular blog on curtain walls with um, divided patterns on it, okay, and a very custom specific made panel and attractors to see what kinds of effects we can actually generate through Dynamo in our projects. Thank you very much for watching once again. Till the next one, have a great day. Be safe.